Thank you very much, Sean. And this is the first time that the department's let me out, so there's lots of nervous people back in the department wondering what I'm going to say, and I will not disappoint them. Maybe I'll start by saying something that might be obvious, but this is my first opportunity to say it in a room like this. I would not have made this move back into government if I doubted this new government's commitment to acting on climate. And acting on the advice that I was offering while I was at CCC. I think they knew what they would get when they asked me. So here I am, and let me start by reporting that it does feel very much like the momentum's back on this. For those of us in government, it's exciting again. And that brings me to the need for a mission. And to mission control, and I can tell you today that that was not a name that I invented for myself. My mission is to deliver clean power by 2030. And that, I think, has all the hallmarks of a genuine mission. It's hugely ambitious, it's measurable, and we will set out exactly what we mean by clean power. It's going to bring enormous benefits to this country when we achieve it. But it is only possible and plausible if we use all of government's influence to deliver it, with the private sector, of course. Now, I quite like the sound of that, and that's the basis on which I took this job. Achieving clean power is one of the clearest messages to the people of this country and the businesses of this country. Plug it in, relax, zero carbon. And that's the kind of bold mission that I think I feel we can get behind. And it's so exciting to have that support right from the top of government, right the way to the Prime Minister, and that is new. So I think clean power by 2030 is, to my mind at least, amongst the most ambitious things across all of the government's priorities that they have committed to. And I also think it will bring enormous benefits to this country when we pull it off. It is also, I think, an investment prospectus for the whole economy. It is also a benefit to people. And I think it's the clearest way that we can push forward to reduce our import dependence on these chaotically priced fossil fuels, priced on global markets, of course, liable to price spikes. That is what has brought untold misery to the people and businesses of this country over the last few years. This is our way through that. Clean power by 2030 is our message to the global community that we are going to continue to set the pace of the energy transition. And that, I think, is very important indeed. And there's one more motivation which I'll share with you, which is a very personal one. I've sat in far too many rooms with very wise people who've said that clean power can't be done to that kind of timetable. I think it can be done, and I would like to prove those people wrong. And it's remarkable how much that matters when you get up in the morning. The more that the whole of the energy sector, who after all will be the ones who deliver this, the more that they see that we're serious about 2030, the more that the key institutions like Ofgem, like the Crown Estate, like our energy system operator, the more that they start to plan around it, the more that clean power by 2030 as a thing starts to come into view. And it's exciting to see it because that is what is happening. So that's what we're trying to do now. We're kind of moving through the gears as quickly as we can. We're going to make lots of decisions in the future, but we've already made big decisions early on. The Secretary of State's removed the onshore wind ban in England. We've maximised that budget for renewables in the first allocation round with the CFD and had a good result there. We've made some big decisions to consent big solar. We've established GB Energy now as a publicly owned developer of the clean energy projects that we will need for 2030 and beyond. We're not pissing about. And just a sort of vignette on how much that needs to change as a system. Last week, you might know, we celebrated the Viking wind farm opening in Shetland. First power came there, it was connected to the grid. I know that project well. That was a project that was stalled when I was first working on energy in the Scottish Government nearly 15 years ago. Viking took almost 2 decades to go from concept to completion. And that, I think, tells you everything about the current system of planning and grid construction and connection. that cannot be the pace that we are moving at. So now I come to mission control. Mission control is a real thing. So mission control is how we're going to bring those kind of projects to completion more quickly with the support of government. It's an actual physical space. We work out of it. We shall eventually be something that looks more like a control centre. At the moment, it's a room with big tellies. But it's also an expression, I think, of a new approach to all of this, to actively kind of bringing this stuff home. There is a dedicated team that is now established in the department. Their job is not just to work in the department as a policy team would normally. They are looking across government. They are devoted to gathering what I think and hope will eventually be real-time data on the progress of the key projects for 2030 against that plan from the NESO. And our job from kind of next year onwards is to really drive the progress of those projects and chase them down, unblock their delivery, remove the unnecessary delays and barriers that we know are there. And this is, I think, the secret sauce to all this. We haven't really tried this before. So mission control is a very, very active thing. It's our active commitment to the achievement of this mission for clean power. But let me now tackle, I think, one of the most challenging issues here. It's an obvious thing to say, but if we want to deliver that plan at the scale and the pace required, we cannot hide from the fact that it will require new development. We have to embrace that. And the Prime Minister is fully committed to that. That, in turn, requires consent. And I mean that in the most general sense. Consent, because some of that infrastructure will be built in parts of the country where presently there is none. And we all know that, but we've got to face that truth. We are going to have to level with people about what is needed for that level of development. And I want to take an honest discussion to the country about what's necessary to achieve that clean power system for 2030 and beyond. That renewables-led energy system is something that I've been advising on for close to 15 years. And it is now within sight. Let's be excited about that. But it does depend on new infrastructure to take power from where it is presently not being generated to the parts of the country that needs it. And it is a very different energy system from the one that was planned around the location of fossil fuel reserves. It's been 60 years probably since we tried to rewire the country like this, and we're going to try and do that much more rapidly than anything that was planned just a few months ago, with the support of the key institutions to deliver that. And it is there. Now, very obviously, to do all of that, we are going to have to reform the planning system. That will be the key to cutting the time for the consent of the key projects, to slashing the very wasteful costs that there are presently in the planning regime, which makes it too slow and too inefficient to deliver what I've talked about today. And we have a vehicle for that. So the King's speech promised a new planning and infrastructure bill early next year. That it will be the enabler of the transition at the pace that I want to achieve it. And I suppose it's very important to say, if we miss that opportunity, it will also mean that we cannot achieve clean power by 2030, and probably a host of other government objectives. So we have to get that right. And let's also acknowledge the other side of this, that people can't be ignored in this. We also have to let them have their say. So we shouldn't cut them out of this discussion about that plan for 2030. We need to help the country understand what is being planned. We can remove this spectre, I think, that we're going to somehow carpet the countryside with wind farms and pylons. We are not going to do that. Again, a clear plan that you can look at on a map helps us level with the affected communities and work constructively to minimise the impact on those communities. Also offer those communities a clearer share of the benefits in that transition. And we need to define more clearly what that means for those communities and offer them a genuine community benefit. That, again, is very exciting. We haven't done that before either. And the benefits here are real. So clean power is obviously the route to lower emissions and lower climate impacts, but it's also the route to stable energy prices for the country. It will deliver us greater energy security, and it will deliver us lower bills. As we bring more and more of that clean power onto the system, we are displacing fossil fuel generation. But we also have a job to show how that will be done. So that will also come from us. We will demonstrate how those lower bills will be achieved. And we have to make it appealing, and this is a key part of this too, we have to make it appealing to people to make those further investments in their lives. And that will happen, I think, if we can bring to life the really exciting story of a smarter energy system. And what that means is one where the demand for electricity more closely matches the supply of renewable energy resources. So when the wind blows, we heat our homes cheaply, we charge our cars when the sun shines, and we are also, of course, providing an opportunity for thousands of skilled jobs for decades to come in this transition by providing a clearer view of what that future looks like for the energy system. That is key, I think, and all of the work I did at the CCC would agree, that is key to the broad public support for this transition, which we have to earn. We will only achieve this when we make it easy for people to make those kind of choices in their lives, because they want to do it. And it just so happens that those choices will also be good for the climate. That, I think, is the way that we should approach it. So, just finishing off, that is the broad plan, but let me just finish by saying, I know these are very grand aims, but they are entirely achievable aims. And I hope I rammed that message home today. That is why clean power is such a well-chosen mission for this country. I'm very proud to be in this role. I'm very proud of this mission. But I also hope that you'll give us the support that we will need to make this thing a success, and of course to make a success of Mission Control itself. And in time I'll invite you in to see Mission Control, and you can have a look at what's on those big screens once we put some data in there. So it's hugely exciting, but thanks so much. And let's move to questions. Thank you.